for people who want to take that route.
Police investigating the murders of an elderly couple in Chelmsford in Essex say they found human remains. The couple's daughter, Virginia McCulloch, appeared in court today, charged with their murders. She's been remanded in custody. Detectives believe Lois and John McCulloch were killed sometime between August 2018 and last week, when concerns for their welfare were raised. The former Prime Minister Liz Truss has urged the government to cut taxes, shrink welfare spending and raise the retirement age. Speaking at the Institute for Government online event, Liz Truss defended decisions made when she was Prime Minister and she presented her mini-budget. She's argued it's unfair to say she'd pursued unfunded tax cuts. NHS leaders say strikes by junior doctors and consultants this week will cause unprecedented disruption for patients. Consultants in England will walk out for 48 hours from tomorrow, with junior doctors joining them on Wednesday and picketing until Friday. Emergency care will continue, but thousands of appointments will have to be postponed. And finally, the folk musician Roger Whittaker has died today at the age of 87.
Oh, you are beautiful, and I have loved you dearly, more dearly than the spoken word can tell.
Well, the singer-songwriter was famous for that 1971 hit song, Last Farewell, and, of course, 1969's Durham Town. Roger Whittaker sold nearly 50 million records worldwide and was particularly popular in Germany. Comedian Matt Lucas posted his tribute tonight on X, saying, "I adored Durham Town and The Last Farewell. Beautiful, warm, catchy songs." Roger Whittaker, who died today at the age of 87. You're with GB News across the UK on your TV, in your car, on your digital radio, and now on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. Joining me tonight to squeeze Tuesday's newspapers to a pulp, two strong men of comedy, Josh Howie and Francis Foster. That's it. Let's see the pecs, Francis, if you don't mind.
Come there you on. Go.
That's just the position. You weren't flexing there.
No, I don't need to flex. Not with this body, Simon.
Cables coming out on the neck. Anyway, we shouldn't get into homoerotic enterprises this early in the show. Let's check out Tuesday's front pages. The Daily Mail kick-off. Proof you can't trust Starmer on Brexit. And, of course, Russell Brand dominating pictorially. The Telegraph. Doctors will be forced off picket lines. And I think that's Kate there under that life jacket. The Guardian. Met warns it will take years to clear out rogue officers. That isn't one picture, that's Liz Truss. The Mirror has new brand assault claim, and poor old Roger Whittaker top right. The iNews. Police examine new Russell Brand sexual assault claims as live tour is axed. And finally, the Daily Star. Hi, love you. Boffins, as always, reveal emotional state is just as vital as genes in determining your height. Well, those were your front pages. So we will kick off, unusually, with our in-depth look into the papers with the Mirror. Josh.
Yes, new brand assault claim. And they've got a picture of Russell there. I think it's strange that he would come out and do a photo shoot for them for that photo, but...
he looks furious enough, though.
He looks very intense. He's trying to exude... Well, I don't know what his look is there.
Well, it's quite similar to your beard, Josh. I mean, I'm just saying, the sort of dimensions of the beard.
That is the only way we're connected. And I dye my beard.
Did you ever work with him?
I know Russell, yeah. We used to run a gig together back in the day.
Did you? Interesting. Because I wrote a piece today for The Telegraph in which I basically asserted that I didn't regard him as a circuit comedian, never saw him on the circuit. One or two people said, oh, no, he did do a little bit of stuff.
He did do the circuit, and
I
did the store with him. He did do the circuit and the periphery, and then he had his own gig that was like new material and stuff like that. So, but I could see it was definitely a few years after you were doing the big clubs. like the Glees. I don't think he ever did like the Glees and the Stand and all those places.
But he had an odd... I mean, which is not to say that it isn't a perfectly valid route to success that he took, you know, the criminal allegations to one side. But it was an odd... He was an odd proposition, wasn't he, from the get-go? Do you know what I mean?
It was like he was going to be a star and the stand-up was part of that, as opposed to the stand-up being the centre of what he does. But...
Anyway...
this article here. So this is the first person to actually come forward to the police. They're saying there's an sexual assault took place in central London in 2003, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And the police saying they haven't launched an investigation yet. So it's all... Here's another front page.
Yeah.
But...
They want to keep it ticking over. And perhaps it's reasonable, Francis, that they should do so in order to lure out further hesitant witnesses and so on. I don't know. Do you think that's a reasonable approach?
It might well be. I think the difficulty is whether he's innocent or guilty, I don't know. But the problem is how are you going to make this allegation stick? How are you going to take it to court? How are you going to prove in court that Russell Brand sexually or allegedly sexually assaulted this person 20 years ago?
They can't. They can't possibly do so unless they have,
witnesses,
unless they have either witnesses or phone messages. I suppose they've discovered they've got some text chains, but they're not decisive. I think it's simply an attempt to make it common knowledge and to do the damage to him that way. I think that's the end game, isn't it?
What, for this particular person? I mean, who knows what motivated him? And also
for the people who did the story, for the Times, for dispatches and so on, they've achieved what they wanted to.
My only hot take on it would be, and actually it's something that I then saw Russell saying, is I don't believe this conspiracy that he's taking the truth and they're trying to bring him down. No. What I do know is that the same people who made lots of money off him for years are now...
That's exactly my point.
Now they're not making money from him. Yeah. Now he's... But at the time, they were able to facilitate...
Egging him on, shielding him.
The criminality element, this is stuff to be decided in court of law. In terms of his bad behaviour, he was...
That was absolutely the ticket.
You know, and he himself has talked about it. So I was hoping we could do more of a sort of... Because that clip went viral earlier of Andrew and Bev Turner having a big old argument at GBNews.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, so you should come... you idiot!
Yeah, you idiot. How dare you say that? He's no, because then I'm going to get clipped.
The other... I mean, there are two equally, I think, extended conspiracy theories. One is that he's being brought down because he was over the target. Yeah. But the other one is that he has been pretending to be over the target for some years in order to gather around him a sort of tribe of followers who will now see this as just further evidence that... Do you see what I mean?
It's lovely to see conspiracy theories can go... Everybody could be as mental as he comes.
Yes, antithesis. Anyway, poor old Roger Whittaker, that was a different era.
Yeah, well, I actually knew his daughter as well, weirdly. This is the night of connections on the front. Yeah, I'm friends with his daughter Jessica, and I'm sorry, Jessica, I haven't spoken to her for a few years, but it's that weird thing of, like, do you call... You haven't spoken to someone for a few years. Yeah. Anyway, it's very sad, but she's a lovely person.
I used to love that voice and that whistling on the radio. Moving on to the Telegraph now, Francis.
Yes, indeed. So this is a Tory government trying to essentially say to doctors that they're not able to strike, that there needs to be a minimum amount of doctors and nurses in hospitals in order to protect and safeguard patient welfare. And I'm going to be honest with you, I agree with this. Look, doctors and nurses, it is their right if they wish to go and strike, but that can't mean that patient care is damaged to such an extent that you're putting them at risk.
No, I think that's reasonable. Yeah. It's very difficult for people in positions where lives are at stake to take usual industrial action, but that is part of the deal,
versus the right to die, or whatever, or live.
And that's particularly because you can have firefighters and so on, they can go on strike and we get the army in, but you don't want the army coming in to do your hip operations.
No, you certainly don't. And the problem is as well, because of what has been happening with COVID, it means that waiting lists are already horrendously long, and every time there is a strike day, it's just getting longer and longer and longer. Yeah. And when it comes to things like cancer appointments, that could literally be the difference between life and death.
Well, that is absolutely correct, and we've already seen a spike, I believe, haven't we, in an uptick in cancer. At the very least, progressing further than it should have done.
Yes, absolutely.
It wasn't spotted earlier. You know, I don't know where the mortality's at. What about The Guardian, Josh?
Yeah, Met warns it will take years to clear out rogue officers, and it turned out, I think it was about 8-9 months ago or something, that the Met had hundreds of officers they were still paying who were on restrictive duties, or but they can't fire them.
These are the ones, again, sexual assault allegations.
Well,
mainly,
and part of it,
well?
all levels. But it's really hard to fire a police officer.
Maybe they should send those guys out to confront the Bully XL dogs. Another win-win situation.
Put them on the K9 team. So there has been in the last 12 months, there's been a 66% increase in this uptick of people being able to finally be fired, but they're basically saying, look, this is going to take us years. And I think it's that they've sort of opened a can of worms here. And they're sort of saying the more we dig, the more stuff we're finding and whatever. But it's not this kind of overnight thing of we're just going to fire everybody who's already
I suppose
suspended.
now they generally wear the cams, right? They wear body cams. And
yes,
so
indeed,
on.
they do.
There's a lot more evidence is being accrued of the kind of behaviour that will get you fired, whereas previously it probably was a bit of a he said, she said kind of situation, I suppose, was it?
Well, absolutely, Simon. But also we need to take into account as well that this is a job where you are put under horrendous levels of stress, which means that you do and say things in order to cope.
Yeah.
It's a famous, adage, that doctors, nurses, police officers have a dark sense of humour.
Humour, absolutely.
So
humour,
we need to be careful that we don't start metaphorically throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and people who say off-colour things or off-colour comments
such
or
as
jokes.
murdering babies as a metaphor for a bad joke. I mean,
exactly. So it's important to know where to draw the line on this issue.
Well, I'm assuming they're talking more about officers who have actually committed what would amount to an offence in any kind of,
exactly. And they're not automatically fired, I think, is the problem. There is a big story here. Build HS2 as promised, North leaders tell Number 10. I mean, it seems ridiculous. They built as far as Birmingham. I read some city, it took 71 billion they've spent so far just to get to Birmingham.
Horrific.
And I think the equivalent in France, they spent about 6 billion for the same thing and bought it in in 2 years, as opposed to this has been going on.
Isn't it? It's all about the badges.
And the train to Birmingham, this height, is actually going to be slower than the train that we had before.
See, I don't see a problem with that. Why do you want to go to Birmingham anyway?
Birmingham Glee?
All they need, I mean, in all seriousness, all they needed to do was improve the Wi-Fi. Or just improve the 4G, the 5G, the Wi-Fi, all along
you would have
all
been
the
happy.
routes. Everyone is happy. Once you're and make sure maybe an extra carriage so you get a seat.
Air conditioning.
Better sandwiches.
Better sandwiches, this kind of stuff, Make the environment better while you're on the train. That would have been fine, but I don't know. Very quickly, the Daily Star, this is you, Francis, with a story about height and optimism, is that right?
Yeah, well, essentially, if you have... your height is not only dependent on genes and diet, but it also is revealing of your emotional state. So if you're a happier-go-lucky person, you're more likely to be tall, which is why Nick Dixon is very short.
I have to say, I always like to have my stool as elevated as possible on this show. It brings my spirits up. That is it for part one. Coming up, we have postmasters, pensioners and programming, all set to be fattened up for Christmas. See you in a couple of minutes.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So, Josh, we will kick off with the Mirror first in this section. Keir Starmer is fat-shaming Brexit.
Well, good news, everybody. We're rejoining the EU. That is the definitive statement. Well, that's certainly
Stephen Fry says the Labour are afraid to even talk about it.
Yeah, well, I guess
not. We feel it in our bones.
Yeah, exactly. but talk about it, he has. And it's interesting to see how the different papers are covering this. The Daily Mail had on it's the betrayal, and this exactly, he's showed his true colours and all this stuff. But the Mirror's saying what the facts are, which is that they want to redo the deal. He said very clearly he doesn't want to join the EU. He doesn't.
What does he mean by thin, though?
Basically, he thinks that I mean, that's what's
not
open
enough
to
detail.
I think it's basically not good enough for us. Not enough connections with trade or whatever.
Connections.
Well, yeah, exactly. But look, he
not enough integration.
Well, the thing is, we left the EU. Now the whole point was we can make our own free trade deals. Well, surely we should be able to have some kind of proper trade deal, comprehensive trade deal with our biggest trading partner and our closest trading partner. But focusing on Australia and whatever. But let's get a great deal with our closest trading partner. That's, I think, what he's saying.
What do you think, Francis?
Well, I think that it doesn't really matter what Keir Starmer says or does. They are in the lead. They are going to win the next election. They have a double-digit lead in the polls at the moment. So all of this is just him trying to basically grab as much of a left-wing vote as possible.
They are starting to firm up now, though, as Josh said last week. They are starting to commit to some actual policies. And that is, there is always the risk that people will go, I thought you would...
And actually, I think that's a mistake. What they should do is be as vague as possible, keep saying things like, look what the Tories done, the entire country's falling apart, and then they win.
Well, they don't say it. They can just people to see it. But actually, I think this is quite clever. Hope maybe because this is a wedge issue in that the Tories have come out and said no, we're sticking with the plan that we have. Yeah. So we are going to see some delineation between the two, which is not a bad thing.
Francis, Independent now, hopefully an end to a long-running scandal is on the horizon.
Absolutely, and this is a post office scandal. So postmasters wrongly convicted of theft due to a faulty IT software will be given £600,000 each. And I don't know if you know about this case. It is absolutely horrendous. So these postmasters, the people running post offices in this country, were given a new software called Horizon, which, with the accounting software, meant that there were discrepancies. So it looked like these postmasters were being dishonest and they were stealing from the post offices. In fact, they weren't. It's because the software was dodgy.
One of the things, I do remember it, and people have been raising it for some time, it's obviously been rumbling on. One thing I find slightly puzzling is you would think that the suddenly elevated, number of apparent postmasters would have in itself.
But I think maybe they thought this software was so good, they suddenly caught them all.
Yeah.
Something they were being dodgy before.
Yeah.
But look, divorce, suicide, incarceration, defamation, convictions.
Suicide,
Yes,
really.
suicide. People lost their lives through this. People's lives have been destroyed through this thing. 736 people were prosecuted. 86 individuals had their convictions overturned so far. Now, so what this is those people, or some of the people, have been offered £100,000. That's what they were previously offered. This is the government coming forward and say, we'll give you £600,000 if you just sign this away.
What do you think, Francis?
Well, look, it's £600,000 is a lot of money, but the reality is no sum of money can bring back the loss of a loved one, or the years spent in prison, or the trauma that when you've been wrongly convicted of a crime, and the damage to your reputation.
I was going to say, and projecting possibly, but I would imagine the sort of people who are drawn towards being postmasters probably hold their own reputation as a for prudence and honesty and reliability in quite high. They probably value that quite significantly, more even than the average individual.
Well, when you read the testimony of people and how they were shunned by their communities and whatnot,
Well, I sincerely hope that will bring it to a close. Telegraph now, Josh, and an iron veil is being drawn across 1 in 7 councils in Britain.
Oh, very good.
Thank you.
1 in 7 councils adopt Islamophobia definition rejected over free speech fears. So in 2019, there was a parliamentary group formed to define Islamophobia. That was the idea behind it, and they came up with it's rooted in racism. So Islamophobia is rooted in racism. Now, first of all, that's circular thinking. Like, there's no, it's and then secondly, it's a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceives Muslimness. So first of all, what does target mean? Like, are you criticising anything to do with Islam? What is Muslimness as such? So it's a very loose definition.
Very muddy.
This is why, and why free speech advocates came forward and said this was a ridiculous definition. It's not that there isn't Islam, I don't know, it's not like it doesn't exist as a concept. I think Islamophobia is the wrong word. Prejudice towards Muslims. But, as a phobia, people argue.
The word phobia the suffix phobia has become the default means of expressing any kind of, as you say, prejudice, hatred, bigotry or whatever. It's not always useful. I think with homophobia, which I think was the first one, I think it was quite insightful because I think a lot of people do project a kind of hostility towards homosexuality sometimes because they're a little bit afraid of it. I think that, is a kind of legitimate observation. With Islam, it's rather a different business, isn't it? Well, you want to be able to say, I don't think you should conduct your affairs that way, in this country.
And the problem is as well, Simon, is you should be free to criticise any religion because what is religion but a set of beliefs and ideas? And they should be as open to criticism as any other set of beliefs and ideas. And once you say, well, hang on, this is a protected category or class, then effectively what is happening is we are living under a theocracy where you are not allowed to criticise a religion.
It's very close to blasphemy. But of course, it is. I do, just to play devil's advocate, I do see the point that for a lot of people, a dislike, a distrust of a whole set of cultural values might very easily map very closely onto a certain kind of ethnicity as well.
Yeah, but that's different. That's an ethnicity. Whereas, of course, Islam is a religion. As such, white Muslims, black Muslims, Asian Muslims, Chinese Muslims. It's a set,
and certainly Indonesian.
It's a set of ideas. So the idea that it's racism as a particular form of prejudice is wrong.
Anyway, staying with the Telegraph now, Francis. Time to be a pensioner, as long as you don't forget your keys.
Well, absolutely. So pensioners are now £4,000 a year better off than working families. They've got more disposable income than working families. So as a result of that, they're doing very, very well. And some people are quite frustrated by this. But Rishi Sunak is actually saying that he's going to keep the triple lock, which will mean that pensions are linked with inflation.
And that pensioners continue to vote Tory.
He says for this, well, he hasn't confirmed after this election.
No.
Which is optimistic that people might think he might have some kind of...
it's been a bumpy, couple of years, obviously, because they disputed the figures in 2022, I think, because they said it was a pandemic bounce. But they've kept pace with it this year, haven't they, when it's been obviously a huge surge. Which very few comedians have seen any benefit from.
No, of course. No, not at all. But we are paying the highest taxes since World War II. So this is crazy. But this, again, goes to the baby boomers being what's called the golden generation, where everything worked out perfect. They're buying houses.
I've had one idea, which I just think, if you're a pensioner, certainly between 65 and 75, you should be offering free childcare. That would be quite a handy system, wouldn't it? So you continue to get your triple lock, but if there are any neighbours within 10 doors of yours who want to drop their kids aged between, say, 2 and 5 off...
I think that's a great idea. I would exclude my parents because look how I turned out.
Daily Mail now, Josh. I think this is probably the last one of the section. A new free TV service is coming up, made up of a number of already free TV services.
I know, it's a slightly strange one here. They're sort of future-proofing themselves. That's the idea.
Yeah.
UK is set to join a new free TV service to take on Netflix as the BBC, ITV, Channel 4 and Channel 5 join forces. Someone a few weeks ago was complaining that there was a sort of... it was unfair that... new TVs come with a Netflix button.
Oh, OK,
this is the idea.
Yeah.
So the idea is that this would come with this new service button called Everyone TV.
Right.
And then you can access it. And, of course, as TVs have changed and as a lot of services now streamed, the idea is to have this streaming service so it's not going out
So
over
you're immediately
satellite.
brought to a menu for all the catch-up TV.
So it's like the Sky menu, but with, you know, BBC.
I guess that makes sense, Francis. Do you watch a lot of TV?
No, I don't watch a lot of TV. I think the TV is probably the wrong thing to say on a TV station.
Oh, Noel Coward said TV is for appearing on, not watching.
And you know what? He was right. But no, I just think that TV is in its death throes at the moment, and I see this as the age of the internet.
Well, certainly, I think programme TV, I mean, funny enough, we were all saying the first thing that a lot of people had watched as and when it came out was the Russell Brand documentary.
Yeah.
You know, it had that kind of appointment viewing, and you suddenly remember what it was like to sit down at a certain time and watch something.
And people tweet about it and whatnot.
Yeah. But that is very much on the way out. But
are you saying Russell Brand brought us together, Simon?
But the development of a format, a platform like this, which could bring together I suppose with the traditional legacy channels, that makes some sort of sense.
It does make sense. I wonder if we're exempt in headliners because it's like a live show. It's about the news.
Oh, we absolutely have an appointment viewing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And thank you very much.
We appreciate your time and commitment, folks. Well, that is it for part 2. Coming up, sexist heart attack, sexist comedians, sexist rock journalists. It's all coming up 70s. We'll see you very shortly.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. It is going to turn very wet and windy as we go through tonight and into Tuesday, with some heavy rain and strong winds arriving for many of us. Looking at the bigger picture, and here's the front that brought heavy rain earlier on Monday, but our attention's turning to low pressure out in the Atlantic, which is going to turn things even more unsettled. Through the rest of today, then, there are some clear skies, particularly across eastern parts, but also plenty of showers following in from the west, some of these heavy, some of them thundery, and we're going to see things turning increasingly cloudy overnight with some wet and windy weather pushing in from the west. After perhaps a chilly start to the night, temperatures will pick up through the early hours of Tuesday morning, so it'll be a mild start tomorrow for most of us, but a cloudy, wet and windy one. You can see the rain is going to be widespread, heavy for some, particularly across parts of northwest England, western Wales. Here we could really see totals building up over the next day or so, but a cloudy picture for most and a windy one with coastal gales, perhaps some sunshine towards northern parts of Scotland. Temperatures near normal for the time of year, but in the wind, the rain under the cloud, it's going to feel pretty unpleasant. Also a wet and unsettled day as we head into Wednesday. Further outbreaks of rain, which is why those totals likely to continue to build up. You can see the rain gradually pushes its way eastwards as we go through the day, with then showers following in behind. These could still be heavy and perhaps thundery at times. Staying unsettled through much of the rest of the week, but perhaps something drier for a spell of time to end Friday.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Keir, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. So we have The Independent now, Francis. Women are less likely to receive CPR from strangers, especially after recent allegations.
Yes, indeed. So this study has found that there's lower rates of CPR in public were found in women regardless of their age. So people are less likely to want to go and assist women and give them CPR, which, to be fair, after everything that's happened in the past few years, is kind of understandable, really.
CPR, in case any viewers aren't familiar with it, being sort of physical manipulation of the chest to get the heart going again, right?
Yes, and look, you know, we can be flippant about this, but this is actually worrying because CPR is a life-saving technique which is used to help people when they've had some things like heart attacks, etc. And it's really important that if a woman needs CPR and is in desperate need of it, that people don't feel embarrassed and able to administer it.
A friend of ours, I won't say his name, told me that he did a John's ambulance course just because he was badgered onto it and he was rather sceptical that it would be very much use, and within a week had saved somebody's life.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, and it was quite interesting. I don't think I would know what to do, to be honest. I did a John ambulance course about 30 years ago, I think, at university.
Remember,
that's
interlock your fingers.
I mean, you sort of see it on the TV, don't you? But and I wouldn't know how to fish out the tongue and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something we did or ought to be familiar with. They have they've repurposed phone boxes with
defibrillators.
Yeah, that sort of thing, isn't it? Yeah, we should all get on top.
But they're also saying that it might be because women are seen as less likely to have heart attacks. So if you see a collapsed woman, you're not necessarily sure that's the reason why. So you wouldn't necessarily jump to that conclusion.
Are there other... Is there like a sort of forking path you have to go down to determine what's wrong with her?
Hopefully it's not touch
the flow chart.
Yeah.
Wow, OK. Staying in similar territory, and now Josh to the Mail, and they want to know if this is comedy's Me Too moment, which is odd, because I'm pretty sure that Me Too was comedy's Me Too moment, wasn't it?
I do remember that, yeah. So, how Russell Brand's behaviour was an open secret in the industry, and female stand-up set up a WhatsApp group to warn one another about at least 5 more sexual predators. So, yeah, I've heard about this WhatsApp group for years, like friends of mine, female friends of mine of comics have talked about it. It's always been unclear to me who exactly was on it, but what they don't sort of mention this, because it was set up during the Me Too movement.
Right.
And I believe there was someone in Scotland who was mental, like had meant and was being very inappropriate and whatever. And I think that was like uncovered him, which is great. But nothing more seemed to really come out from it. What I heard happened to the group was, and this could be mishearing, was it just went a little bit over the top, and people started getting put on this list, this men for not inappropriate behaviour, like maybe sort of talking a bit close to somebody or whatever, you know, and that fine line. And
well, this is it. It can be used, obviously, in bad faith. I mean, that's the problem with we all remember Philip Schofield passing the list to David Cameron, don't we, of people who were supposed to have been involved in horrific child sex offences and so on, and how quickly it became obvious that it's very dangerous territory.
Well, it is very dangerous territory because whilst rape, sexual assault and all of these crimes are horrific and the impact that they have on their victim can last for the rest of their lives, we also need to be very careful that we don't just smear people as rapists and sexual offenders just because of hearsay.
So I suppose, in a way, what we're saying is the list, as it currently functions, is possibly the perfect compromise. But of course, they're going to be because you know nobody's life is going to be ruined by having a bad reputation, you know, thrust out there. It's just keep your eyes open if you find yourself in a dressing room with this guy. But
well, yeah. But then I saw an accusation that went out this weekend that was seemed quite a spurious claim of someone.
Right, OK.
But not sexual, like someone basically walking in on someone had locked a toilet door, and then this person now, and this comic we know, the claim has been made against, he's like very upset about it and go, wait a minute, this happened, you know, so it becomes...
I mean, there is a part of me, I'll be honest, maybe it's selfish, that kind of wishes the names would come out, just so that we can all, just so that it clears the air and we kind of... So the 98% of blokes who haven't got a cloud hanging over their heads just sort of go, thank you, OK, you know, but... Because it is beginning to feel as if the whole comedy industry is suspect.
Yeah, well, it's like you said in your article about how Russell Brand in particular comes from the TV industry.
Very different thing, because your whole status is elevated on TV. You know, you are the talent. You have people scurrying around. It doesn't happen in comedy.
Yeah, but why doesn't it happen here? We don't have any of this. I don't even get
precise reason.
I don't even get a cab home at the end of the night anymore, mate.
But also, a lot of this is coming from the open mic circuit, where you've got a lot of nutters.
Yeah, that's true as well. Guardian now, Francis. Rolling Stone founder Jen Venner is gathering some moss after all.
Yes, so the founder of the Rolling Stone, Jan Venner, has come under a little bit of criticism. Because he created this article, this book, I can't remember what it was.
It's a book, yeah.
It's a book where he
Masters.
only... Yeah, that was it. The book called The
White Masters.
Yes, exactly. Only white rock performers, whom he dubbed the philosophers of rock, and saying that they were more articulate than their black counterparts, which, let's be fair, is a little bit racist.
Well, particularly... Let me play the devil's advocate. He says they're articulate... He talks about it at some length, and he says they don't articulate on rock and roll. And, I mean, he says, like, Curtis Mayfield, Marvin Gaye, and also Joni Mitchell, because there's no women in there.
Yeah.
Joni Mitchell has never made a rock and roll record in her life. She's a folk jazz singer.
Well, I find that quite interesting because neither Marvin Gaye nor Curtis Mayfield are actually rock and rollers. No. Marvin Gaye is a soul singer.
That's what he's saying. He says Stevie Wonder, maybe you could argue, might have something to say about rock and roll, but it is I mean, Phil Lynott would have been a good argument, maybe.
Yes.
Or
Phil Lynott,
Jett, you know. But
Chuck Berry would have been in there. Chuck Berry only passed away recently.
That's a good point. He could have had Chuck Berry. But the names he mentions, Bono, Bob Dylan, Jerry Garcia, Mick Jagger, John Lennon, Springsteen, Pete Townsend.
And what also about Slash from Guns N' Roses? Is he not a rock and roller?
You say he's mixed race?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, OK, yeah.
So the fact that, you know, look, and especially when you think that rock and roll comes directly from blues music, I do find it quite insulting, if I'm honest.
I think maybe you're right. He could have... I can see what you're saying. It's disingenuous to mention Marvin Gaye and not kind of go, well, yeah, but not him. But, yeah.
Exactly. But at the end he says, maybe I should have gone and found one. He says one black. I don't. It's America. In America, they call like they say black people. Like they use that term. I would say someone who's black. Like, but they go like one black and one woman artist to include here that didn't measure up to the same historical standard just to avert this kind of criticism, which is mental.
Yeah.
It's.
No, you're right. Chuck Berry would have been a good person to hear from, I think.
Yeah, Chuck
maybe,
Berry...
I mean, I think it's a combination of his former interviews. Maybe he didn't have one, but maybe that's why. Anyway, he's taken the hit now, I believe. He's been removed from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and all the rest of it. The Times now, Josh, historian has defiled the empire with iron theft claims. Although I'm trying to work out if that's maybe a pun on file and defiled.
I think it's just hyperbole.
Oh, okay.
This thing, historian defiles the empire with iron, which is totally ridiculous. So this is in the History and Technology Journal, and they're investigating Dr. Jenny Bulstrode, who said that Henry Court, who's famous for, not that I knew who he was, but he did some iron-making techniques.
Yes.
And she is claiming that actually he stole them from 72 slaves in Jamaica.
Wow.
Like from there, 76, sorry, metallurgists.
76 black metallurgists.
In Jamaica, the famous song. And basically, and other historians have come forward and there's absolutely no evidence for this.
No.
It's totally spurious and ridiculous and whatnot.
And she's come up with it on some podcast about white supremacy or something.
Yeah, exactly. And she's sort of saying they didn't just steal black people's bodies, they stole their ideas and their whatever. And this is... Like,
it's not helpful, is it?
No, it's not helpful. Not like when there are interesting things. There are interesting people of colour within history, and there are, there's arguably things have been a bit myopic on the old white European front and whatnot.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this sounds
the Benin Bronzes. They had some metallurgy in Africa, but I don't think it went over to Jamaica with the slaves.
No. And those are beautiful, by the way. I saw them in the museum. But and it's that sort of appropriation of it. It's like. It's unnecessary and probably hurts.
She's elevated her name, but possibly not her reputation. We're going to have to clip along quickly now. In fact, that is it for part 3. Coming up, dating news special, a love of Barbie movies, a good sense of humour, and at least 6'3" in your socks. That's what women are looking for. We will see you in part 4.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
Mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. For the final section, it is the mirror now, Josh. It's becoming easier to see why women, at least, might be lonely. Is that right?
Yes. Well, majority of women say it's a major red flag if a man refuses to watch the Barbie movie. Now, this says here, the Barbie movie is considered by many to be the film of the year. I'm sure that's true, but it's certainly not.
No.
At all. You seen it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was very disappointed.
Very, very
my
disappointed.
wife and daughter assured me it was light-hearted and funny. I just didn't find it funny
There
at all.
were light-hearted and funny bits.
A couple of gags, but I found
I took the family, which
incoherent.
was a big mistake, because the boys... there was not a positive message about men in that film.
It was very hard to see what the message was. I mean, it just all they left on a sort of quest and then almost immediately wanted to restore the status quo. Which has not been.
Anyway, so this conversation proves that we're lucky we're married.
Yeah.
Because if we weren't, we wouldn't meet a partner, because that's what
my
they're
wife
looking
has
for.
a cupboard full of
That's
red
what they want.
flags.
They want someone going, Barbie's the best film I've ever seen.
So they want a gay man.
Here, listen to this bit. This is the bit that I thought was bizarre. A whopping 53% of women said it was a red flag if their partner didn't want to watch the flick directed by Greta Gerwig. Yeah. That is compared with only 31% of men who said it's a deal breaker.
Yeah.
No, there is no number of men who think it's a deal breaker not to watch Barbie. Like, literally zero.
31% of men who are trying to have sex.
Yeah.
Yes. Who would give that answer.
Who said it would be a deal breaker if she insisted on watching it, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe that way around. It's ridiculous. These are all ludicrous. They said 76% saw being a MAGA Republican as being a deal breaker. That's like half the population. I mean, this is in America.
Well, the one that I've found even more ridiculous is 55% said that they saw it as a deal breaker if they listened to the Joe Rogan podcast.
It's absurd. It's propaganda.
Particularly your episode.
Yeah, exactly.
I understand that one. That makes total sense.
More dating news in the mail, Francis, something that will be news to this show's vast collective female fan base.
Yes, indeed it is. What it says, you're having a laugh. Women don't just prefer funny men, they also think they're more intelligent and earn more, which just goes to show how little women actually know. So basically it's saying, if you're a man and you're funny, you will seem to be more attractive, more intelligent, and therefore have a better career. Because I remember on my show, we spoke to an evolutionary psychologist who actually said the reason that we have humour is so that we can display intelligence.
Sexual selection.
Yes, it's by saying that we're so successful that we can use all of this energy and put it into something as frivolous as humour, thereby displaying how successful we are.
It's the peacock's tail, isn't it?
Indeed it is.
Excess, redundant capacity. Have to say, though, the examples given are not that persuasive. This is one of the funny remarks. They were given their remarks.
Yeah.
The past, present and future were having an argument. It was tense.
It sounds like the winner of the best Edinburgh joke.
No, that's a bit unfair on that, mate. At least that's structurally
I quite
sound
like
as a joke.
this one. What do you call a tiger with glasses? A scientist tiger.
I know, that's the anti-humor, but that's the unfunny joke.
I know, but I prefer that. It's kind of, you know.
But I think it's, obviously men use humour, some men able to use humour, and there is a study of comedians showing that comedians, on average, have a higher IQ. The problem is we're too funny, so we don't actually earn any money.
What it is, though, it's all a question of the scenario, isn't it? It's fine if you're just, like, sitting around having a laugh on a Sunday afternoon, a couple of lagers, being jolly. Grace under pressure, that's what women find attractive. If you can remain funny when everything's going wrong.
Yeah.
That's when they start to go, oh, this is a keeper.
Well, really, they should come to some of Josh's gigs then.
I do think there is something to that. If you can die with grace.
I've been there.
Royal news in the Sun now. Francis, the heir to the throne, can afford to deny his kids things that poor people feel obliged to buy them.
Do you know what, Simon? I despair. I don't want to hear or talk about the royal family anymore.
OK, Josh.
I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Josh, you can talk about
it.
Actually,
there is an interesting element to this particular thing. The 7 normal things that George, Charlotte and Louis are not allowed to do. Yeah. So things like... So number 1 is they're not allowed iPads. And number 2 is they are not allowed any junk food, so they can't have any packaged foods. Now, those 2 examples are basically because they're rich.
Yeah.
If you don't have an iPad, then they've got nannies there to take... They talk here about they're out, they're playing games, they're in the dirt.
They've got a perfectly good golf course or
they've got a garden that they can play in. We don't have that. They've got someone who can actually engage with them, as opposed to my wife and I working at home and trying to do 1,000 different things.
Although it has to be said that kids did find things to occupy them eventually before there were iPads. I mean, but, you know, ours grew up with them, I know.
But there may be 2 working parents and... other different
No, you're
things.
absolutely right, though. It is, I mean, it is a luxury. And in a way, it's sexual selection again. It is like being funny. If you have the capacity, it is a flex. Our kids don't have phones, our kids don't have iPads, our kids don't blah, blah, blah. They just go skiing and play tennis.
And who's got the time to cook all this food? That you
Well, exactly. You know, and it's glorified virtue signaling. It's the fact that we support these people with our taxes, and then they go...
We support them as they don't buy iPads.
We do. And then they come and lecture us and go, oh, look how great our life is. Oh. Yeah, well, so what? I don't care.
I support them emotionally.
What about your Uncle Andrew? Tell me about that.
The fussy eating one, though. I quite support that. Do you not like that?
Yeah,
one?
no, I think that is actually quite... I respect that. Shove it down their throat.
Finally,
yeah, that's how the police came round last time, Josh.
A story in The Independent that a French ski resort is to close for good, despite Brexit.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, this one doesn't have anything to do with Brexit. We can't blame Brexit on this one. Yeah, French ski resort closes forever due to lack of snow. This is a resort that's near the Trois Valley. I don't know if you've done those gigs out there. They're pretty fun. And, yeah, they basically were losing like €500,000 a year. And they just haven't had enough snow, right? Didn't have enough snow the last few seasons. They got like 4 weeks of snow. They used to get, like 10 years ago, like months and months of snow. Yeah. It's very sad.
It's just not worth firing up the old little, elevated runway or whatever.
I guess there's that economic thing. A lot of them are using that. That's how they're surviving, by using that snow gear.
Maybe it can become a hiking centre or something.
Well, that's what I think they want to turn it into.
Yeah, and also let's not forget as well that the French don't like working, so that might be down to it as well.
Well, the show is nearly over, just like the snow. Let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages to wrap up. We have the, what have we got first? The Daily Mail. Proof you can't trust Starmer on Brexit. The Telegraph. Doctors will be forced off picket lines. Guardian. Met warns it'll take years to clear out rogue officers. The Mirror. New brand assault claim. And farewell, Roger Whittaker. The iNews. Police examine new Russell Brand sexual assault claims as live tour is axed. And finally, the Daily Star. I love you. Boffins reveal emotional state just as vital as genes in getting height. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Josh and Francis. I'll be back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Paul Cox and Lewis Schaefer. Maybe I'll call in sick. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, thank you for your business and trade. We'll see you again soon. Good night.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. It is going to turn very wet and windy as we go through tonight and into Tuesday, with some heavy rain and strong winds arriving for many of us. Looking at the bigger picture, and here's the front that brought heavy rain earlier on Monday, but our attention's turning to low pressure out in the Atlantic, which is going to turn things even more unsettled. Through the rest of today, then, there are some clear skies, particularly across eastern parts, but also plenty of showers following in from the west, some of these heavy, some of them thundery, and we're going to see things turning increasingly cloudy overnight with some wet and windy weather pushing in from the west. After perhaps a chilly start to the night, temperatures will pick up through the early hours of Tuesday morning, so it'll be a mild start tomorrow for most of us, but a cloudy, wet and windy one. You can see the rain is going to be widespread, heavy for some, particularly across parts of northwest England, western Wales. Here we could really see totals building up over the next day or so, but a cloudy picture for most and a windy one with coastal gales, perhaps some sunshine towards northern parts of Scotland. Temperatures near normal for the time of year, but in the wind, the rain under the cloud, it's going to feel pretty unpleasant. Also a wet and unsettled day as we head into Wednesday. Further outbreaks of rain, which is why those totals likely to continue to build up. You can see the rain gradually pushes its way eastwards as we go through the day, with then showers following in behind. These could still be heavy and perhaps thundery at times. Staying unsettled through much of the rest of the week, but perhaps something drier for a spell of time to end Friday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good evening. As 10,000, yes, 10,000 young men arrive in the little island of Lampedusa over the weekend, I'm going to ask the question, will this destroy the European Union? In London this morning, Liz Truss gives a defiant speech defending everything she stood for in her brief time as Prime Minister. We'll ask the question, why on earth are the NHS spending millions involving more and more inclusion and diversity officers? Surely the 7.7 million waiting list is more important. I will give my first response on the Russell Brand scandal. But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you. Good evening. Well, the top story tonight is that Russell Brand's tour promoters have announced his 3 remaining charity fundraiser shows have been postponed, and that's after earlier on this afternoon the Metropolitan Police confirmed it had received a report of an alleged sexual assault involving the comedian, saying that incident happened 20 years ago. 4 women have so far accused the 48-year-old of rape or sexual assault during the height of his popularity between 2006 and 2013. The BBC, Channel 4 and the production company Banjay UK have all launched internal investigations. Russell Brand denies all the allegations against him. Now, post office workers who were wrongfully convicted in the Horizon scandal are to be offered £600,000 each in compensation. More than 700 branch managers were imprisoned for theft and false accounting when faulty software made it show that money was missing. A public inquiry into the scandal was set up in 2020. 86 people have had their convictions overturned, but the Business Minister, Kevin Hollinrake, says the government wants to help people who've been wronged.
No ifs or buts. If you've suffered a conviction and you've had that conviction overturned, £600,000 is there waiting for you. And we're doing this because people have suffered horrendous situations, of course, financial loss as well as personal damage to reputation. Many other things have happened to people. So we want to get this compensation out the door. We always have wanted to, but this is a much quicker way to do it for people who want to take that route.
Police investigating the murders of an elderly couple in Chelmsford in Essex say they found human remains. Detectives believe Lois and John McCulloch were killed sometime between August 2018 and last week. Concerns for their welfare were raised last Wednesday. Virginia McCulloch, understood to be the couple's daughter, has been remanded in custody after a brief appearance in court today. The former Prime Minister, Liz Truss, has urged the government to cut taxes, shrink welfare spending and raise the retirement age. Speaking at the Institute for Government online event, Liz Truss defended decisions made in her mini-budget while she was PM. She argued it was unfair to say she had pursued an unfunded tax cut. And finally, the Princess of Wales has visited the Royal Naval Air Station in Somerset. Kate, who's Commodore-in-Chief of the Fleet Air Arm, has been shown around Royal Naval Air Station Yeovilton today, one of the busiest military airfields in the UK. She also spent time in air traffic control, meeting staff and people there. She even spoke to an airborne Wildcat helicopter crew as it came into land. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Well, it's not as if I didn't warn them. I told them that the implementation of an EU common asylum policy, which basically said anyone that crossed the Mediterranean and set foot on EU soil could stay, I warned them it would be a disaster. Here I was in 2015. I suspect that it's a shock, or will be a hell of a shock, to many European citizens, including the British, to understand that we've already agreed a common European asylum system. And what today is about, and today's resolution, is the direct implementation of it. The problem, ladies and gentlemen, is this. The definitions for who qualifies for asylum are so wide, they include not just people coming from war, not just people coming from failed states. Mr Juncker this morning seemed to suggest that perhaps it would even include people who were fleeing poverty. I'm sorry, we simply can't accept countless millions. Well, I stand by every single word of that, and yet the millions started to come in 2015 and 16, and whilst it's gone a little bit quieter across the Mediterranean, this year the numbers that have come into Italy are double what they were last year. And look at what happened to Lampedusa over the weekend. Over 10,000 young men arrived across the Med in small boats, 200 small boats. This wasn't organised by some random trafficker. This was almost a military-scale operation. This was an invasion. Almost double the population of the island arrived over the course of the weekend. And some of those who thought maybe they wouldn't be accepted began to get pretty aggressive. Now, this has led to the Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, who was elected on a platform of Stop the Boats. She's been in Lampedusa with the unelected President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. And Meloni is saying, please help. We want the European Union to share these people around, and we want a European Navy to try and stop the boats. As for the EU itself, those people, the very people I was criticising in that speech in 2015, all she can say is she wants to establish safe and legal routes for people to come into the European Union, none of which is going to stop the boats. And you can see in much of this debate some very, very similar patterns with what we have in this country, with Rishi Sunak saying, stop the boats. Unless the European Union or Italy itself send people straight back to Libya and Tunisia, many, many millions more will come. And I'm going to speculate this will destroy the European Union, destroy it politically, and I think in time, destroy it socially too. Sorry for that bleak prognosis. Do you agree with me? Please let me know. Farage@gbnews.com. Well, joining me now is Anand Menon, Director of UK in a Changing Europe, who joins me live from Oxford. Well, Anand, I'm speculating that if this goes on, if this is the second really big wave of those crossing the Mediterranean, it may well be a rapidly changing Europe.
Well, I think you're absolutely right to point out that this is the sort of crisis that the EU really struggles with, because when it comes to burden sharing, Europe always fails to get agreement. And at the moment, what you see is some states like Hungary and Poland basically saying, no, we're not going to take part in this scheme. We're not going to share people who come to Italy. That's your problem, not our problem. So I think there's no doubt about it. The EU is going to face a really severe test if these numbers keep coming over to Lampedusa.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, Anna, what's to stop these numbers from coming? I mean, there is no pushback. Little signs of pushback in Greece that we saw last year, but no sign of that from Italy, no sign of that from Giorgia Meloni. I mean, who's to say that the numbers that don't come this year and next year aren't enormous? Where are they all going to go?
Well, I mean, I think it's unfair to say the EU hasn't done anything, because Meloni and von der Leyen were over in Tunisia a few weeks ago signing a deal with the Tunisian government to try and get their help in stopping people coming across. But it is a genuine problem. There are large numbers of people, many of whom would qualify under Italian international commitments to asylum seekers to stay. And Europe doesn't have a solution in sight.
No, I don't think it does. Politically, Anand, we've already in Europe seen quite a significant rightward shift. We've got, for example, in Sweden, the Swedish Democrats in coalition government. In Germany, we now have the AfD polling over 20% nationally and up in the high 20s, early 30s in parts of the former East Germany. Meloni, of course, is the Prime Minister of Italy, and Le Pen is now the bookies' favourite to become the next president of France. Are we about to see Europe move not just to the right, but possibly genuinely to the far right?
I mean, the first thing I would say is those polls from France I would always take with a pinch of salt, because they always tend a few years out to be slightly hypothetical. And of course, it's a two-round system.